She was his intern and untouched, until the ice-cold billionaire ruined all his rules for her smile. Instead of firing her like everyone expected, Dominic did something that sent shockwaves through the entire office. He smiled, a real smile, and whispered 5 words that would haunt her dreams. Have you ever felt completely out of place in someone else's world? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The coffee hit his $3,000 Italian suit at exactly 8:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, and by 8:48, Leah Monroe's entire world had shifted on its axis. She stood frozen in the middle of Cross Global's marble lobby, watching dark Colombian brew drip from the fabric of Chicago's most feared billionaire. Around them, morning commuters stopped mid-stride, phones already out, capturing what everyone assumed would be her final moments as a living, breathing intern. Dominic Cross didn't move, didn't speak. His steel-gray eyes locked onto hers while coffee pooled at his Italian leather shoes. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her Georgia accent thicker under stress. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Cross. Have you ever made a mistake that completely changed your life? Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best discoveries." She fumbled for napkins from her purse, the same worn leather bag her mama had carried to 3 jobs just to pay for Leah's college textbooks. Her hands shook as she offered them, and when his fingers brushed hers taking the napkins, something electric shot up her arm. "Where are you from?" His voice was lower than she expected, rougher. "Georgia, sir. Macon, Georgia." The lobby buzzed with whispers. Other interns backed away, like she had a contagious disease. Victoria Blackwood, his stunning fiancée, would hear about this within minutes. Everyone knew she didn't tolerate anyone getting too close to what belonged to her. But Dominic kept staring at Leah with an expression she couldn't read. The way she bit her lip while apologizing made something dangerous stir in his chest. Something he'd buried under years of calculated business moves and cold corporate decisions. "You packed your lunch today," he observed, nodding toward her brown paper bag. Heat flooded her cheeks. "Yes, sir. Tuna sandwich." A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. When was the last time someone in his world packed tuna sandwiches? When was the last time someone looked at him without wanting something? Money? Power? Connections? "The suit can be cleaned," he said finally. Relief nearly buckled her knees. "Thank you, Mr. Cross. It won't happen again." "No," he agreed, still studying her face. "It won't." The elevator arrived with a soft ding. As the doors opened, revealing the gleaming interior that would carry him to his penthouse office, he paused. "Next time you're working late," he said, voice just loud enough for her to hear, "order dinner on a company card. Nobody should survive on tuna sandwiches in this city." The lobby fell dead silent. Even the security guards stopped pretending to check their phones. Instead of firing her like everyone expected, Dominic did something that sent shockwaves through the entire office. He smiled, a real smile, and whispered 5 words that would haunt her dreams. "I'll see you around, Georgia." The elevator doors closed behind him, leaving Leah standing in a puddle of spilled coffee and 200 pairs of curious eyes. Her phone buzzed with a text from her roommate Sarah. "Girl, you're either fired or famous." Which one? But all Leah could think about was the way his fingers had felt against hers, and how for exactly 3 seconds, Chicago's most ruthless CEO had looked at her like she mattered. Share your story about unexpected moments that changed everything. Sometimes the worst mistakes lead to the best discoveries. She learned about his engagement the same way everyone else did, from the society pages of the Chicago Tribune, where his fiancée's diamond looked bigger than Leah's hometown. Victoria Blackwood entered the conference room like she owned it, which, technically, her family's trust fund helped finance. Blonde hair swept into a perfect chignon, diamonds at her throat, and eyes like winter ice. "Ladies," Victoria's voice carried the authority of old money and new power. "I'm sure you've all heard the wonderful news." Leah hadn't heard any news. She'd spent the weekend helping her mama pay bills over FaceTime and eating ramen noodles while other interns hit Chicago's nightclub scene. "Dominic and I are finally making it official." Victoria held up her left hand, where a diamond the size of a golf ball caught the morning light. The engagement party is next month, and I'll need all hands on deck. The other interns cooed appropriately. Leah felt sick. Miss Monroe, Victoria's attention landed on her like a spotlight. You'll be handling the personal details. Seating charts, menus sélections, floor arrangements. The kind of work that requires attention to detail. Translation, grunt work. The kind of task designed to remind Leah exactly where she stood in Victoria's perfectly ordered world. Of course, Miss Blackwood. I'd be honored. Victoria's smile could have cut glass. How refreshing. Someone who knows her place. But as the meeting continued, Leah noticed something odd. Victoria discussed the engagement like a business merger. Guest lists that included board members, seating arrangements that maximized networking opportunities, a menu designed to impress investors rather than celebrate love. Have you ever felt completely out of place in someone else's world? When wealth and power make you question your worth. After the meeting, Leah gathered her notes and headed for the door, but Victoria's voice stopped her cold. One more thing, sweetheart. The endearment dripped with false sweetness. I've heard you've had some interactions with my fiancé. Small-town girls sometimes get confused about boundaries in the big city. Leah's spine straightened. I'm sorry, I don't understand. Coffee incidents. Late-night work sessions. Men like Dominic collect strays sometimes, but they always remember where they belong. Victoria stepped closer, her perfume expensive and suffocating. Make sure you remember where you belong. The threat was wrapped in silk, but it was still a threat. That afternoon, Leah was deep in engagement party logistics when her computer pinged with a private message from Dominic's assistant. Mr. Cross needs to see you. Personal matter. His office. 6 p.m. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Personal matter? What personal matter could Chicago's most powerful CEO have with a girl who packed tuna sandwiches? As Victoria left the building that evening, she turned back with a smile sharp as glass. Make sure the little intern knows her place, darling. Some lines should never be crossed. But Dominic's eyes were already searching for Leah across the office floor. The elevator ride to the penthouse felt like ascending to another planet. Whatever he wanted to discuss, Leah had a feeling her simple Georgia life was about to get a lot more complicated. Drop a comment about overcoming intimidation. Well, have you had to prove your worth in someone else's world? The office building after midnight felt like a different world. One where a billionaire CEO could sit on the floor eating gas station snacks with a girl who reminded him what genuine laughter sounded like. You bought these at gas station? Leah held up the bag of chips, incredulous. Dominic Cross, worth more than some small countries, shrugged from his position on his office carpet. The vending machine was broken. I improvised. They've been working on engagement party details for 3 hours. What started as a professional meeting had slowly transformed into something else entirely when he'd asked about her family, and she'd asked about his. The Chicago skyline twinkled 45 floors below them, the city alive with late-night energy while they sat surrounded by wedding magazines and half-empty coffee cups. Tell me about Georgia, he said, voice softer than she'd ever heard it. Not much to tell. Small town, smaller dreams. Mama works at Waffle House, been there 15 years. She used to say Chicago was where dreams go to get bigger or die trying. Which one is happening to yours? The question caught her off guard. Nobody ever asked about her dreams. They asked about her grades, her work performance, her 5-year plan. Never her dreams. Still figuring that out, she admitted. What about you? Did you always want to run an empire? His laugh was bitter. I wanted to be a teacher. High school history. Can you believe that? She could actually. Despite his reputation for ruthlessness, she'd noticed how he explained things, how he made sure she understood not just what to do, but why it mattered. What changed? Family business. Family obligations. Family expectations. He took a sip of cold coffee and made a face. Sometimes I wonder what my life would look like if I'd been brave enough to disappoint them. When did you realize someone saw the real you behind all your walls? That moment when pretending becomes impossible. You could still teach, she said quietly. After hours programs, community college, something. Victoria would never. He stopped himself, but the words hung between them anyway. Victoria would never what? Understand. She sees teaching as beneath our social circle. Leah studied his profile in the city lights. What do you see it as? Important. More important than most of what I do here. He turned to meet her eyes. You think that's naive? I think it's beautiful. The air between them shifted, charged with something neither wanted to name. When she laughed at his story about his first board meeting disaster, really laughed, something inside his chest cracked open, a part of himself he'd locked away years ago. As she gathered her things to leave, he caught her wrist gently. His touch sent heat racing up her arm. Leah, he said, voice rough with something unnamed. This party is not what I want. The words hung between them, loaded with implications neither was ready to face. She could feel his pulse under her fingertips where their skin touched, could see the conflict in his eyes. Then why are you doing it? Because sometimes what we want and what we need are different things. His thumb brushed across her wrist bone. But sitting here with you, I'm starting to forget the difference. Share that breakthrough moment when someone saw past all your defenses. When did pretending become impossible? Victoria Blackwood didn't become Chicago's most feared socialite by ignoring threats. And the way her fiancé looked at his little intern was definitely a threat. The HR office felt sterile and cold. Nothing like the warm Georgia sunshine Leah suddenly missed desperately. Across the conference table, Victoria's lawyer smiled like a shark scenting blood. These are serious allegations, HR Director Patricia Wells said, reviewing the formal complaint. Inappropriate conduct with a superior. Violation of company policy. Potential harassment claims. Leah's hands shook in her lap. I don't understand. I haven't done anything inappropriate. Haven't you? Victoria leaned forward, her wedding planning binder open to show photos of flower arrangements. Late-night meetings. Private conversations. Employees have noticed your special treatment. I was assigned to help with your engagement party. Those were work meetings. Work meetings don't typically involve personal conversations about family and dreams. Victoria's lawyer interjected. We have witnesses. The room felt smaller with each accusation. Leah realized with growing horror that Victoria had been having her watched, documenting every interaction, building a case designed to destroy her. Miss Monroe, Patricia continued, given the sensitive nature of these allegations and Mr. Cross's engagement to Miss Blackwood, we think it's best if you transfer to another department. Effective immediately. Transfer to what department? Leah's voice cracked. Victoria's smile was arctic. I'm sure we can find something suitable. Mailroom, perhaps. File management. Translation. Career death. Nobody moved from executive intern to mailroom and ever recovered. Have you ever been targeted by someone who felt threatened by you? How did you handle jealousy and power plays? The conference room door opened without warning. Dominic entered like a storm front, his presence immediately shifting the room's energy. What's going on here? Patricia stammered through an explanation while Victoria maintained her innocent act. But Dominic's eyes found Leah's across the table, and she saw something that made her pulse race, barely controlled fury. You moving her to mailroom? His voice was deadly quiet. We felt it was best. Based on what evidence? What inappropriate conduct? Victoria placed a manicured hand on his arm. Darling, we discussed this. Some employees get confused about boundaries. It's better for everyone if what? If we destroy someone's career based on gossip and jealousy? The words hit like bullets. Victoria's mask slipped for just a second, showing the calculation underneath. I think you're too emotionally involved to make rational decisions about this, she said carefully. Am I? He stepped closer to Leah's chair, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, close enough to forget they weren't alone. Because from where I'm standing, the only inappropriate behavior I see is character assassination disguised as corporate policy. The meeting ended with Victoria's ultimatum delivered through gritted teeth. Leah transfers to another department immediately, or Victoria would ensure she never worked in Chicago again. But as they walked out, Dominic's hand found the small of Leah's back, and his whispered words sent shivers down her spine. Pack your bags. We're going to Aspen. Share your survival story. How did you maintain your dignity when someone tried to destroy your reputation? The private jet lifted off from Chicago, carrying 2 people running from the same truth. That some attractions are too powerful to deny, no matter the cost. I can't believe I'm doing this, Leo whispered, staring out the window as the city grew smaller below them. Dominic watched her face instead of the skyline, having second thoughts, third and fourth thoughts. This is crazy. Your fiancé just tried to destroy my career, and now I'm on your private jet heading to Colorado. People will talk. Let them. The simplicity of his answer stopped her protests cold. Dominic Cross, who'd built his empire on controlling every variable, every outcome, every potential scandal, was suddenly willing to let people talk. The Rocky Mountains stretched endlessly beneath them, snow-capped peaks catching afternoon sun like diamonds scattered across velvet. But neither passenger was looking at the view. They were stealing glances at each other. "There is no business meeting, is there?" she asked quietly. He was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, no. Then why? Because in that conference room, watching them try to destroy you for the crime of being yourself. He ran a hand through his hair. "I realized I'd rather face a scandal than watch you disappear." The cabin felt smaller with each passing mile, the air between them charged with unspoken possibilities. When turbulence rocked the plane, his hand shot out to steady her, fingers wrapping around her wrist. Neither of them pulled away. "What happens when we land?" she asked. "I don't know. I haven't thought past getting you away from Victoria's poison." It was the most honest thing anyone had ever said to her. No plans, no calculations, no corporate strategy. Just raw honesty from a man who never showed his cards. When has someone completely surprised you by putting you first? That moment when actions speak louder than words? "She'll never forgive this," Leah said. "I'm starting to think I don't care." The confession hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they should cross. Below them, mountains gave way to valleys, and the afternoon sun painted everything gold. What if this ruins everything? Your company, your reputation, your future. He turned to face her fully. What if not doing this ruins something more important? Like what? Like the first time in 10 years I felt like myself instead of what everyone expects me to be. Her breath caught. Outside, clouds drifted past the windows like cotton candy. But inside, the space between them crackled with electricity. As they approached the cabin, snow began falling harder than forecasted. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. "Weather's getting bad fast. You might be stuck up there longer than planned." Leah caught Dominic's eye, and for the first time, neither of them looked worried about being trapped. Maybe some prisons were exactly where you needed to be. The landing was smooth, but her heart hammered against her ribs as they descended the jet's stairs into swirling snow. The cabin waited in the distance, lights glowing warm against the white landscape. Tell me about unexpected gestures that changed everything. When has someone put your happiness before their own safety? The power went out at 11 p.m., leaving them alone with nothing but firelight, wine, and 3 days' worth of confessions neither planned to make. "Well, this is cozy," Leah said, trying to keep her voice light as darkness swallowed the cabin whole. Dominic moved through the shadows like he owned them, lighting candles with the confidence of a man who'd prepared for every possibility. Except this one. He hadn't prepared for the way firelight would dance across her skin, or how wine would make her laugh more freely, or how being trapped together would strip away every pretense they'd been hiding behind. The cabin glowed amber in firelight, shadows dancing across log walls while wind howled outside like a living thing. Inside, wrapped in cashmere throws, 2 people finally stopped pretending they were just business associates. "I've been thinking about what you said," she murmured, wine making her braver. "About teaching, about wanting something different. Dangerous territory," he warned, but his smile was soft. "Why?" "Because it's honest." They were sitting closer now, the cold driving them toward the fireplace, toward each other. His cologne mixed with smoke and something purely him, dangerous and intoxicating. "When's the last time you did something just because you wanted to?" she asked. You mean besides kidnapping my intern to Colorado? I mean really wanted. Not because it was smart or profitable or expected. He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Outside, snow continued to fall, sealing them off from the world and all its complications. College, he said finally. Senior year. I spent 3 months in Italy teaching English to kids in a small village. No business connections, no networking opportunities. Just teaching. What happened? Real life. Family obligations. The company needed me. He took a sip of wine. I told myself I'd go back someday. What's stopping you now? Everything. The company, the engagement, the expectations. He looked at her then, really looked at her. Until tonight, I thought those things mattered more than anything else. Have you ever had a moment when all your walls came down at once? When you stopped fighting what you really wanted. The fire crackled between them, casting dancing shadows on the walls. She was close enough to count his eyelashes, to see the conflict warring in his expression. What changed? She whispered. You. Sitting here with you, talking about dreams instead of stock prices and merger deals. I can't remember the last time someone asked me what I wanted instead of what I planned to do. Her lips parted on a soft breath. The space between them disappeared inch by inch until she could feel his warmth, could see the exact moment he stopped fighting what they both felt. When he kissed her, it was like coming home and falling off a cliff at the same time. Her lips tasted like wine and possibility, soft and warm against his as snow painted the windows white. When she sighed into his mouth, he knew he was lost. They broke apart breathless, foreheads touching, the world reduced to firelight and racing heartbeats. We shouldn't, she started. No, we shouldn't, he agreed, but his thumb traced her jawline like he was memorizing her face. This changes everything. Everything was already changed. We just stopped lying about it. As they broke apart, breathless and wanting more, her phone buzzed with a text that made her blood run cold. Victoria, enjoy Aspen, sweetheart. I know exactly where you are and with whom. Share that moment of surrender when you stopped fighting what your heart wanted. She woke up in his arms to 2 things. The most beautiful sunrise she'd ever seen, and 17 missed calls from a woman who could destroy her life before breakfast. Dawn painted the mountains rose gold through frost-covered windows, but the beauty couldn't touch the dread settling in Leah's stomach as she watched Victoria's name flash across her phone screen again and again. Dominic stirred beside her, his arm tightening around her waist. For one perfect moment, she let herself pretend they were just 2 people who'd found each other, not a billionaire CEO and his intern who just crossed every line that mattered. Good morning, he murmured against her hair, voice rough with sleep. Is it? She showed him her phone. Victoria's been calling all night. His expression hardened as he scrolled through the missed calls, the increasingly threatening text messages. The last one made his jaw clench. Hope it was worth it. Both of your careers end today. She knows, Leah whispered. How does she know? Victoria makes it her business to know everything. He sat up, running both hands through his hair. She probably had us followed. The fairy tale was over. Reality crashed back in with the force of an avalanche, burying the warmth they'd created under a mountain of consequences. I have to call her, he said. No. Leah grabbed his wrist. Let me handle this. Absolutely not. You're not facing her alone. She's your fiancé, Dominic. And I'm just. Don't. His voice was sharp. Don't you dare diminish what happened here. What you mean? When have you had to choose between what you wanted and what was safe? Between your heart and your future? Her phone rang again. This time, she answered. Well. Victoria's voice dripped poison through the speaker. The little intern finally answers. Having fun playing house with my fiancé. Victoria, don't speak. Listen, you have exactly 4 hours to get back to Chicago and clean out your desk. Then you disappear. Forever. No references, no recommendations, no future in this city. And if I don't, Victoria's laugh was ice cold. Then I make sure your mama loses her job at that little Waffle House. Funny how health inspectors can find violations anywhere when they're motivated. The threat hit like a physical blow. Leah's mother had worked at the same restaurant for 15 years. It was her whole world, her pride, her security. You wouldn't. Try me, sweetheart. I've destroyed bigger threats than you over breakfast. The line went dead. Leah stared at the phone, hands shaking. What did she say? Dominic's voice was dangerous. She threatened my mother. Tears blurred her vision. Her job, her livelihood, everything, even in crisis. The way he looked at her made her skin burn with remembered touches. But desire meant nothing when survival was at stake. We're going back, she said, standing and reaching for her clothes. This was a mistake. Leah, we both knew this couldn't last. I just forgot for a while that fairy tales don't happen to girls like me. The private jet touched down in Chicago to a nightmare neither expected. Paparazzi waiting at the airport, cameras flashing, and Victoria standing behind the barricade with a smile that promised destruction. Share how you navigated impossible choices when everything you loved was at risk. Victoria Blackwood had perfected the art of destruction wrapped in designer silk, and she was about to demonstrate exactly why crossing her was Chicago's most expensive mistake. The restaurant fell silent as Victoria's voice carried across white tablecloths and crystal glasses, every word calculated to wound while maintaining perfect social composure. Darling, she said to Dominic, loud enough for surrounding tables to hear, I'm so glad we could meet for lunch. We have so much to discuss about your little weekend getaway. Leah sat beside him, every eye in the restaurant trained on their table. This wasn't a private conversation. It was a public execution disguised as brunch. Victoria, we should discuss this privately, Dominic said, voice tight with controlled anger. Oh, but privacy is what got us into this mess, isn't it? Victoria's smile could have cut diamonds. Besides, I think Miss Monroe should hear what her little adventure is going to cost. She opened her purse and placed photographs on the table. Leah's stomach dropped. Pictures of them at the cabin, kissing by firelight, his arms around her as they watched the sunrise. Lovely shots, don't you think? My photographer has such an artistic eye. You had us followed, Dominic said, his voice deadly quiet. I protected my investment. You see, sweetheart, Victoria turned to Leah with mock sympathy. Men like Dominic collect strays sometimes. They think they want something real, something pure, but they always remember where they belong. Have you ever been publicly humiliated by someone who felt threatened by your happiness? How did you maintain your dignity when everything fell apart? What do you want? Leah asked, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. Smart girl, I want you gone. Not just from the company, from Chicago, from his life. Completely. And if she refuses? Dominic leaned forward, protective instincts in overdrive. Victoria's laugh tinkled like breaking glass. Then these photos go to every major newspaper in the country. Billionaire CEO caught in scandal with teenage intern. Won't matter that she's 22. Won't matter that it was consensual. The story writes itself. You're bluffing. Am I? Your stock price has already dropped 12 points since rumors started circulating this morning. Your board is demanding answers. Cross Global can't survive a sex scandal, darling. You know that. The walls were closing in. Everything Dominic had built, everything his family had worked for, hung in the balance. But wait, Victoria continued, savoring every word. There's more. She placed another envelope on the table. Medical forms, pregnancy test results. Surprise, darling. We're having a baby. The restaurant seemed to tilt sideways. Leah felt the blood drain from her face as Victoria's final card hit the table with devastating precision. Pregnant? Dominic stared at the papers like they might spontaneously combust. 8 weeks. Right around the time you started your little charity project. Victoria's hand moved to her still flat stomach in a gesture clearly designed for maximum impact. Against the marble counter, with her family's future hanging in the balance, Leah reached for Dominic's hand under the table. One last touch before everything ended. Choose now, Dominic, Victoria said, voice soft as velvet and twice as deadly. Your empire and our future or your little charity case. But choose carefully, because if you pick her, I'll make sure she pays for every second you spend in that cabin. Share your strength. When everything fell apart, how did you find the courage to keep fighting? Some people break your heart by leaving. Others shatter it by staying and pretending they never loved you at all. The cross-global lobby had never felt colder than the morning she cleaned out her desk. Every step echoing off marble floors that had once seemed magical but now felt like a mausoleum of dreams. 3 days had passed since Victoria's ultimatum. 3 days of silence from Dominic while Chicago's business world buzzed with speculation. 3 days of Leah wondering if she'd imagined the connection that had felt so real in that firelit cabin. Her answer came in the form of a company-wide email. Due to recent concerns about professional boundaries and appropriate workplace conduct, Cross Global is implementing new policies regarding intern supervision. Effective immediately, Miss Leah Monroe's internship has been terminated. We wish her well in her future endeavors. Corporate speak for, she'd been erased. The elevator arrived with its familiar ding. When the doors opened, Dominic stood inside, but he wasn't the man who'd held her as snow fell outside their cabin. This was the CEO. Cold, distant, untouchable. Mr. Cross, she said formally, stepping inside. Miss Monroe, when someone you loved pushed you away to protect you, did you understand their sacrifice? Sometimes the cruelest kindness looks like betrayal. The silence stretched between them like a canyon. She could see the war raging behind his eyes, could feel the tension radiating from his body, but his face remained a mask of professional indifference. Congratulations, she said quietly. On the baby, his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Thank you. I hope you'll be very happy. The elevator stopped at the ground floor. As the doors began to open, revealing the lobby full of curious eyes and phone cameras, he spoke without looking at her. For what it's worth, I'm sorry it ended this way. Are you? The words slipped out before she could stop them. Because from where I'm standing, this looks exactly like what you planned all along. Now he did look at her, and for just a moment the mask slipped. She saw pain there, raw and real, before the CEO face snapped back into place. Goodbye, Miss Monroe. She walked through that lobby with her head high, carrying a box of personal belongings and the shattered pieces of her heart. Behind her, she heard his footsteps stop, heard him say something to his assistant, but she didn't turn around. The Chicago streets were bustling with lunch hour traffic, people rushing past without sparing a glance for the girl whose world had just imploded. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mama. Flight leaves in 2 hours, baby girl. Come home. As she climbed into the taxi that would take her to O'Hare, Leah pressed her face to the window for one last look at the gleaming tower that housed Cross Global. Somewhere in that building, behind floor-to-ceiling windows, was the man who'd taught her that fairy tales were just stories people told themselves to feel better about impossible dreams. The elevator doors closed between them like a guillotine, severing the connection that had rewired both their hearts. On the plane back to Georgia, she found a letter slipped into her bag. His handwriting, 3 words that changed everything. This isn't over. Share your story of choosing truth over image when everything was falling apart. She came home to Georgia carrying Chicago's skyline in her heart, and his cologne still lingering on her favorite sweater. Some things distance couldn't wash away. The Georgia peach orchard behind her childhood home stretched golden in late afternoon sun, a world away from glass towers and marble floors, where healing happened in the scent of magnolia and the rhythm of cicadas. Baby girl, you look like somebody stole your favorite hymn, her mama said, wrapping Leah in arms that smelled like vanilla and unconditional love. Just tired, mama. But tired didn't cover the hollow ache in her chest, or the way she caught herself looking for his face in crowds, or how she still reached for her phone hoping for messages that never came. You want to talk about it? Not yet. Her mama nodded, understanding in the way only mothers could. Well, when you're ready, I'll be here. In the meantime, Mrs. Patterson called. She needs help with her marketing for the farmer's market. Pays decent, too. Marketing, the word used to excite her. Now it just reminded her of conference rooms and late-night strategy sessions and the way he'd explained complicated concepts like she mattered. How do you heal from love that felt real but ended in betrayal? What helped you trust again after someone broke your heart? The weeks blurred together in a haze of small-town routine. Church on Sundays, helping at the farmer's market, teaching computer skills to senior citizens at the community center. Simple work, honest work, the kind that didn't require designer suits or corporate politics. But even in dreams, his hands felt real against her skin, his whispered name on her lips betraying her waking resolve to forget. "You're not eating enough," Mama observed over breakfast one morning. "I'm fine. Fine is what you tell strangers. I'm your mama. Try again." Leah pushed eggs around her plate, appetite still missing in action 3 weeks after Chicago. "I fell in love with someone I couldn't have. End of story." "Honey, love stories don't end. They just take intermissions sometimes. This wasn't a love story, Mama. This was a mistake. Mistakes don't keep you up crying at night." The truth hit like Georgia sunshine after rain, sudden, warm, impossible to ignore. She had been crying. She had been mourning something real, something worth the pain it caused. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. New position available. Marketing director, Atlanta firm. Excellent references already provided. Interested, her hands trembled as she read it again. Excellent references? From where? She'd left Chicago in disgrace, with no one willing to vouch for her professional reputation. Unless. The second text came an hour later, from a different number. "Hope you're settling in well. Your mother's restaurant received a glowing review in Southern Living magazine this week. Funny how good press finds its way to deserving places." Her heart hammered against her ribs. Victoria couldn't reach her mama's job in Georgia, but someone with connections, someone with influence, someone who cared enough to make sure she landed safely. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, simple white envelope with no return address. Inside, a plane ticket to Chicago and 4 words in his familiar handwriting. "I need your help. Share your healing journey." How did you find strength after someone you trusted broke your heart? The plane ticket back to Chicago felt like holding fire, dangerous, destructive, but impossible to ignore when everything inside you was already burning. She stood in O'Hare Airport 3 weeks after swearing she'd never set foot in this city again, clutching a letter that had turned her quiet Georgia healing upside down. For words, "I need your help." Not "I miss you," or "I'm sorry," or "I made a mistake." Just need. The taxi ride through downtown Chicago hit her like a physical blow. Every familiar street corner, every gleaming building, every memory she tried to bury came flooding back with devastating clarity. "You sure this is the address, miss?" The driver double-checked the paper she'd handed him. "This ain't Cross Global." She stared up at the modest law office building, nothing like the marble palace where their story had begun. "I'm sure." Inside, she found him in a cramped conference room that smelled like cheap coffee and legal briefs instead of his usual expensive cologne and power. He looked like he hadn't slept in weeks, stubble shadowing his jaw, his usually perfect hair disheveled, expensive suit wrinkled like he'd been wearing it for days. "You came," he said, and the relief in his voice nearly broke her resolve to stay angry. "You said you needed help. What kind of help does a billionaire need from a disgraced intern? The kind that might send me to prison." The words hit her like ice water. She sank into the nearest chair, studying his face for signs he was joking. He wasn't. Have you ever discovered someone you trusted was living a completely different reality? When did you realize nothing was what it seemed? "Victoria's been embezzling from the company for years," he continued, voice flat with exhaustion. "Charity donations that never reached their destinations. Investment funds that disappeared into offshore accounts. She's been using Cross Global as her personal bank. And you just found out?" "I found out 3 days after Aspen. The forensic accountants I hired to investigate some discrepancies came back with evidence that could destroy her." He ran both hands through his hair. "The pregnancy announcement was her way of buying time, making sure I couldn't move against her without looking like a monster." "Is she really pregnant?" "No. The medical forms were fake. All of it was fake." The conference room felt smaller with each revelation. Everything she believed about that horrible lunch, about his choice to stay with Victoria, about the baby that had sealed their fate, lies, all of it. So why not expose her? Why not go to the police? His laugh was bitter. "Because she's smarter than both of us. The evidence trails lead back to my personal accounts, my digital signatures, my access codes. She set it up, so if anyone goes down for this, it's me. That's impossible. Is it? She's had access to everything for 2 years. My passwords, my files, my entire digital footprint. She could have been setting this up from the beginning. The magnitude of Victoria's deception was staggering. Not just emotional manipulation, but criminal fraud on a scale that could topple empires. "What do you need from me?" she asked quietly. "Your brain, your eye for detail. You caught discrepancies in the engagement party budget that my own accounting team missed." He leaned forward, desperation evident in every line of his body. "Help me find the real evidence before she disappears with everything. Share your story about uncovering deception that changed everything. When did you realize someone's lies went deeper than you ever imagined?" They worked through the night like detectives in a crime thriller, following paper trails that led deeper into Victoria's web of lies than either had imagined possible. Here, Leah pointed to a discrepancy in the Charity Foundation records. March 15th, donation to Children's Hospital, $500,000. But look at this bank statement. The money never left the account. Dominic leaned over her shoulder to study the documents, close enough that she could feel his warmth, smell the familiar scent that had haunted her dreams for weeks. Focus, she told herself. This was about justice, not the way her pulse raced when he was near. She created fake receipts, he said, voice tight with anger. Made it look like the donations went through while keeping the money. It gets worse. Leah pulled up another file. Look at these investment accounts. The ones she told you were performing poorly, they're actually making record profits. She's been skimming the earnings and reporting losses. The scope of Victoria's betrayal was breathtaking. Not just stealing money, but stealing hope from children who needed medical care, from families who depended on Cross Global's charitable foundation, from investors who trusted their retirement funds to her management. "How much?" Dominic asked, though from his expression, he already suspected the answer would be devastating. Conservative estimate? $47 million over 3 years. He sank into his chair like she'd punched him. 47 million. And that's just what we can trace so far. The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but neither of them noticed. They were deep in the hunt now, following digital breadcrumbs through offshore accounts and shell companies with names like Victory Holdings and VB Investments, Victoria's initials hidden in plain sight. When did you realize someone you trusted had been playing a completely different game? That moment when betrayal revealed its true scope? "She's been planning this for years," Leah said, studying transaction patterns. "Look at these transfers. Small amounts at first, gradually increasing as she got bolder. The engagement," Dominic said suddenly. She pushed for it right after the accountants started asking questions about the discrepancies. She needed to secure her position before anyone got too curious. And when you started pulling away, when she realized you were suspicious, she accelerated the timeline. The pregnancy lie, the ultimatum, getting rid of you. It was all designed to keep me distracted while she covered her tracks. The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. Victoria hadn't just been jealous of their connection. She'd seen Leah as a threat to her criminal enterprise. Smart enough to spot irregularities, honest enough to report them, and close enough to Dominic to be believed. "There's something else," Leah said, her voice suddenly quiet. "These medical forms she used to fake the pregnancy, they're stolen. Real patient records with the names changed. Medical fraud on top of embezzlement. And identity theft. She's been using patient information from her charity board position at Chicago General to create false documents. The woman who'd positioned herself as Chicago's charitable darling had been stealing from the very causes she claimed to champion. The hypocrisy was staggering. As dawn broke over the Chicago skyline, they had enough evidence to destroy Victoria Blackwood's carefully constructed empire. But they also had a target on their backs. "She knows we're getting close," Dominic said, checking his phone for the 10th time in an hour. "Share how you handled discovering someone's crimes went deeper than you ever imagined." Victoria Blackwood didn't survive Chicago's social battlefield by underestimating her enemies, and she just realized that she'd been fighting the wrong war entirely. The phone call came at 6 a.m., Victoria's voice silk-wrapped poison flowing through the speaker. "Good morning, darling. I trust you slept well in your little law office hideaway." Dominic's blood turned to ice. She knew where they were. "Don't look so surprised," Victoria continued, clearly watching them somehow. "Did you really think I wouldn't have contingencies? Insurance policies? Ways to protect my interests?" Leah grabbed his arm, fear written across her face as she realized the implications. If Victoria was watching them, she knew about the evidence they'd gathered, knew about the paper trail they'd uncovered. "What do you want, Victoria?" "Well, I've always wanted respect, recognition, and the $50 million I've earned managing your boring little charity projects." Her laugh was ice cold. "Though I suppose it's closer to 60 million now, with interest." "You mean stolen?" "Semantics, darling. I prefer creatively redistributed. And before you get any ideas about playing hero, you should know that every piece of evidence you think you've found can be explained away. Digital signatures can be faked. Access codes can be stolen. Security footage can be altered." The trap was closing around them with surgical precision. Victoria hadn't just been stealing money. She'd been building an elaborate frame job designed to destroy Dominic if he ever threatened her operation. Have you ever realized you were walking into a carefully planned trap? When someone's manipulation went deeper than you thought possible. "But here's what's going to happen," Victoria continued, her voice taking on the authoritative tone she used to command boardrooms. "You're going to transfer the remaining company assets to my designated accounts. You're going to sign a statement admitting to financial irregularities, and you're going to disappear quietly. And if I refuse, then tomorrow's headline reads, 'Billionaire CEO embezzles millions, frames innocent fiancé.' I have documents with your signatures, video footage of you accessing accounts, witness statements from employees who saw you working late when the transfers occurred." Leah felt sick as the scope of Victoria's planning became clear. Every private moment, every late-night work session, every act of trust had been weaponized against them. "You've been setting this up since the beginning," she said. "Smart girl, though not smart enough to stay in Georgia where you belonged." Victoria's tone turned deadly. "Did you really think I'd let some small-town nobody destroy years of careful planning?" The conference room felt like a cage now, walls closing in with each word. Outside, Chicago was waking up to another ordinary day, unaware that in a cramped law office, two people were facing the collapse of everything they'd worked for. "You have until noon," Victoria said. "After that, the evidence goes public, the FBI gets an anonymous tip, and you both become Chicago's most wanted criminals." The line went dead, leaving them in silence that felt like the grave. "She's going to frame us both?" Leah whispered. "Not both of us." Dominic's voice was quiet but determined. "Just me. You're getting on a plane back to Georgia. Now, I'm not leaving you to face this alone. You don't have a choice. She's already destroyed my life. I won't let her destroy yours too. Tell me about standing together when everything fell apart. When did loyalty matter more than safety? Sometimes the only way to win a rigged game is to change the rules entirely, even if it means risking everything you have left to lose." "There's another way," Leah said, her voice cutting through Dominic's despair like sunlight through storm clouds. He looked up from the resignation letter he'd been drafting, the document that would hand Victoria everything she wanted. "What are you talking about?" "She made one mistake. Just one, but might be enough." Leah pulled up the medical records Victoria had used to fake her pregnancy announcement. "These patient files? They're not just stolen, they're from active cases. Current patients who are very much alive and very much able to testify that their medical information was used fraudulently." "How does that help us?" "Because medical fraud is a federal crime, FBI jurisdiction, and unlike financial crimes that take months to investigate, medical fraud with living victims gets immediate attention." For the first time in days, hope flickered in Dominic's eyes. "You think they'll believe us?" "I think they'll believe a room full of cancer patients whose private medical information was stolen to create fake pregnancy tests." Leah's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up contact information. Victoria made this personal when she targeted sick children and vulnerable families. The phone call started at 8 a.m. Patient after patient confirming that yes, those are their real medical records, and no, They had never given permission for their information to be used that way. By 10 a.m., they had 12 confirmed victims willing to file federal complaints. When have you found strength in helping others fight injustice? Sometimes protecting strangers gives us courage to protect ourselves. At 11:30, 30 minutes before Victoria's deadline, FBI agents walked into Cross Global's marble lobby with warrants and questions that couldn't be answered with charm and manipulation. Victoria's arrest was broadcast live on Chicago's morning news. Designer handcuffs didn't match her Chanel suit, but justice rarely cared about fashion coordination. She's claiming innocence, Dominic said, watching the news coverage from the law office that had become their war room. Of course she is. But innocent people don't keep $60 million in offshore accounts under fake names. The evidence unraveled Victoria's empire with devastating efficiency. Bank records, medical fraud, identity theft, charity embezzlement. Charges that would put her away for decades, not months. What happens now? Leah asked as federal agents finished taking their statements. Now I rebuild. The company, my reputation, everything she tried to destroy. He turned to face her fully. I was hoping you might help with that. Help how? Come back to Chicago. Not as an intern this time. As my partner. The word hung between them, loaded with professional possibilities and personal promises neither was quite ready to name. Business partner? She asked carefully, to start with. His smile was soft, tentative, real. Though I should probably mention, I'm not engaged anymore. I noticed, and I was thinking about that teaching program we discussed. Turns out Cross Global could use a community outreach division. Someone to make sure our charity work actually reaches the people who need it. Outside, Chicago stretched endlessly in all directions. A city of second chances and new beginnings, where small-town girls could build empires and broken billionaires could learn to trust again. Share your comeback story. How did you rebuild after someone tried to destroy everything you worked for? 6 months later, the Cross Global Charity Foundation's new headquarters buzzed with the kind of energy that came from doing work that actually mattered, led by a woman who understood that real success was measured in lives changed, not dollars earned. The Children's Hospital project is fully funded, Leah announced at the board meeting, her confidence a far cry from a nervous intern who'd once spilled coffee in the marble lobby downstairs. We'll break ground next month. Around the conference table, board members nodded approvingly. These weren't the same corporate vultures who'd enabled Victoria's schemes. Dominic had cleaned house completely, replacing greed with genuine commitment to making a difference. After the meeting, she found him on the executive floor balcony, looking out over the Chicago skyline that had once seemed so intimidating but now felt like home. "Penny for your thoughts," she said, joining him at the railing. "Just thinking about how different this view looks now." He turned to smile at her, and her heart still skipped beats at the warmth in his eyes. "Remember when you thought this city would eat you alive? I remember someone telling me that small-town girls don't survive in places like this." Someone was an idiot. The wind off Lake Michigan carried hints of autumn. Reminder that seasons changed, that time moved forward even when you thought your world had ended. Victoria was serving her sentence in federal prison, the stolen money recovered and distributed to its rightful recipients. Cross Global stock price had not only recovered but reached record highs under new ethical leadership. "I have something for you," Dominic said, pulling a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. Her breath caught. "Dominic, before you panic," he said quickly, "it's not what you think." "Well, not exactly what you think." He opened the box to reveal not a diamond engagement ring, but a simple silver band with a small inscription. "Teaching changes everything." "It's a promise ring," he explained, voice soft with nervous vulnerability. "A promise that will take this as slow as you need. A promise that your dreams matter as much as mine. And a promise that when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'd like to spend the rest of my life proving that fairy tales can happen to girls from Georgia." When did someone show you that love could be patient, respectful, and built on partnership instead of possession? That real love waits? Tears blurred her vision as she held out her hand, letting him slide the ring onto her finger. "What if I'm already ready? Then I'd say we should probably start with dinner. Real dinner, not gas station snacks and stolen moments. Are you asking me on a date, Mr. Cross? I'm asking you to let me court you properly, Miss Monroe, the way I should have from the beginning. The Chicago skyline glittered in evening light, a city of dreams and second chances where anything was possible for those brave enough to believe in love that conquered more than just hearts. Love that transformed entire lives. Yes, she said, standing on her tiptoes to kiss him as the sun set over the city that had nearly destroyed them but ultimately made them stronger. Yes to all of it. Below them, the city hummed with millions of stories, but theirs was just beginning. Share your new beginning story. When did you realize the worst thing that happened led to the best thing in your life?